Hey everyone, this is your favorite host, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today we have Andrew Davis coming to the stage. This man is going to talk about something that's new. It's not necessarily new to you and I, but it's new to most people. We're going to talk about alternative investments. And so, unlike traditional investments, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, we're going to talk about something that is we all should consider to adding to our portfolio. So stay tuned, stay with us. We're going to break it down. We're going to dive a little bit deep here with Mr. Andrew. All right, here we go. Hey, welcome to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show. This is your host, Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. I'm your favorite host coming to you live, and I am bringing this incredible man, this wise young man to the stage, and he's going to break down alternative investing, but more specifically, comic book and trading cards and how those are valued and evaluated and how those can actually make you some money. His knowledge is extensive with a focus on comic books and collectibles. And as a result of that, over the years, he's really dove deep and helped people really expand their portfolio into these new markets of comic books and trading cards. And so help me welcome to the stage, Mr. Andrew Davis. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
Hey, I'm excited to be here and thank you for having me because it's a good day. Every day I'm alive.
Absolutely. A friend of mine, most older people, they always say, hey, it's always right to be on the right side of the grass, this side of the grass. So I'm with you. I'm with you. Hey, Chanel, how's it going? We have our VIP sponsor in the house, Miss Nicole Morris. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Y'all are incredible. Appreciate you. Mr. Andrew, tell us, sir. I want to dive a little bit deep, but I want you to tell me some backstory. How did you get your start? You could have done a number of different things. That's an awesome shirt, by the way. I love the shirt.
Yeah, I know. I got this shirt on sale for $15 and I was like, how can I refuse not to buy a shirt for $15? And it has like a soccer jersey vibe to it. So it's like that cool like soccer jersey material. And it's just such a trippy shirt. And I'm just like, awesome. But I have no affiliation with this shirt at all. They don't sponsor me or anything like that. I just really like it. And I thought it was a cool shirt to wear. But
Nice.
anyway, I digress right there. So how I got started is obviously my father was a traditional investor and I am a traditional investor as well, where I invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and index funds. But what wound up happening is that I was a comic collector and I just started buying comics. And then in college, I needed beer money and I needed money to buy next month's comics. And so you say, cool, what do I got? I'm a broke college kid. And fast forward, you go through your collection, you're like, oh, snap, a comic book is going for $120 that I spent 20 on. And I didn't just have beer money anymore. I had beer money for 3 months and I had comic book money. And then all of a sudden you need more money in a few months. And then I do the same thing again and again 4 or 5 times. You say, wait a second, there's a pattern here. And then you start realizing really quickly what is valuable, what isn't. And you start noticing a trend in comic books and what goes for money. And then I started slowly tailoring what I buy and bought. And that's kind of how I got started. And that's the short story. But it took about 3 years to fully figure out what that was. And now I know it full time. And I've been doing this as a side hustle. And it produces me a lot of money every single month, where not like a lot of money, not like $1 million, but it produces me enough of a side hustle that I then can take my money and actually invest it in more traditional assets and speed up what I'm doing. And so I'm moving assets around that I then put into dividend stocks. And so now that I figured out about 4 years ago.
So you're a alternative investment flipper. You take a comic book that you may have spent $20 on, and then you take that and flip it for the $100, $200 sale, and then you buy traditional investments to give you that never ending yield, that dividend yield.
And there's a slight caveat because I then if the item costs $20, I buy another item for $20. And so it's almost treated like a private equity firm where the first people that I pay is the fees on what I sell. Then I pay my taxes, then I buy a new item, and then I take the profits out. And that's what I think people don't understand is that, you know, I am taking money out of the business and out of my alternative investing business to utilize in other things for diversification purposes. And so now at this point in what I'm doing in my alternative business, no new money's being added. So I essentially had seed money that no new money's being added because it self funds all of it. And the fun part is I get to hold cool comic books and cool collectibles for a certain amount of time. And now there's no new money being added, but it's producing me money and I'm growing my wealth. And that's what people don't understand. And this is a common mistake that I feel a lot of people in the alternative investment space make, where if you sell a book for $100, it costs you 20, they take the $100 and they throw it right back into the business. And you have to do that initially when you start a business, but you have to get to a point where you have to treat this like a business. This
True.
to me, it's an eBay business with alternative investing. It's not an alternative investing that is done through eBay. And those two things are different.
True. That makes sense. So let me get this straight. Do you have a comic book by chance nearby?
Yeah. I got this because Super Bowl is in 2 weeks. So
Okay.
this is a cool graded comic book. This is a 350 print limited graded comic book. That is graded and signed. So this is an objective grade, meaning that this is rated as a 9.4. So if I go put this on eBay, everybody knows this is a 9.4.
Mhm.
If I have, I'll just use this as a poster. This is not a comic book. This is a very subjective grade. This is an objective grade. And what makes this one cool is that it's actually signed and the signatures is authenticated. And the reason why this book might be worth more than a 9.6 that's signed is it's got this little thing called Super Bowl champs because this is when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and that was their first, championship. So I had the artist who did the cover write Super Bowl champs on it because it adds value. And he did it for free and he signed this for free, but I also paid him a lot of money to do a commission for me. So naturally, but it's the idea that this adds value to it. But this is a personal book.
And this is something you started. You primed the pump once, and you never had to invest more money ever since.
So every once in a while, I have to borrow money from me, but I pay myself back.
Right.
So, for instance, you might have to borrow $300 maybe once a year, but then I pay myself back immediately after I get that $300. But yeah, I don't really invest in my business as far as adding massive amounts of capital into it. Um, and then even if I have to do an investment, it's treated like a loan from myself to the business. And then I pay myself back sometimes within 6 months, sometimes within a month, and so now and look, that limits growth per se
Right.
in a lot of ways, but I'm also taking my profits and I'm putting it into the stock market. I'm putting it into other assets. I'm putting it into a money market account, and so that's something that I do very well in that realm. But that's at the exit of all this. That's not really the heart of the business. That is what I do after I make money in my business. But it's a common mistake that I feel people make in the alternative space is that because alternative investing, there's a science to it and there's real money to be made. And the reason why you want to be an alternative investor is that you can do better rates of returns. So I
Yeah.
could buy a $10 comic and within 6 months pull out $100 of it. That is very hard to do in other investing.
It's
You
true.
can't do that in real estate. You can't do that really in the stock market unless there's a bad day. Every 12 years, there's a nightmare where the market falls 40%. But it is very hard to do that consistently. And in comics and baseball cards and a variety of other things, you can do that where you could have a 10x multiple in 6 months, for instance. And so that's why people are interested in alternative investing. But the way I function is that I have a month category, I have a 3 month category, I have a year category, I have a 5 year category, and I have a 10 plus year category.
Those
And what I
categories mean how quickly you think you can sell that comic.
or how long I want to hold on to something.
Okay.
So, for instance, there's a book that that book that I made 120 on, it took me 5 years, but it had an annualization rate per year of 43%. So it took 5 years to go from $20 to $120. And I didn't
Just by
come in,
holding the comic book.
yeah, the appreciation. And then what I sold it for was $110. So I sold it $10 less than what it was valued at, because somebody made me an offer for $110 on eBay when it was valued at 120, and I'm not going to say no over $10,
Right.
especially when you buy the book for $20. I understand not to be greedy,
Right.
and so that's kind of what I do, but more than happy to answer any questions, because this is all like this. I know you have a lot of questions, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat have a lot of questions about this, and I'm more than happy to answer everything and anything.
So we do have a question from our VIP sponsor, Ms. Nicole Morris. She asked a question. Great question. Does condition of the comic truly matter? If so, what level of wear and tear is acceptable?
So it depends on the book. So if you have a book from the 1970s, I'll give a great example. So everybody knows the X-Men. The X-Men came out in a giant size X-Men. A 1.0 graded X-Men, which a 1.0 is a bad grade. I think 10 is a great grade. 9.9, 9.8, those are all great grades. A 0.5 or a 1 is a bad grade. A 0.1 in a giant X-Men, which means it's beat up, it's got some tears, it's not in great shape, goes for $2,000 to $2,500. So depending on how old the book is, depending on how many survived, wear and tear can be acceptable because there's perceived value in certain books. If certain events happen in certain books, and you have a 7.5 in a book, which is, obviously 7.5 on a scale of 1 to 10,
It's really great.
It's middle of the road. It's a little bit better than middle of the road. It's the idea, though, that if the book is 40 years old, that's going to obviously fetch more value if something happened in that. But in a modern book, like this book right here is a 9.4. This is not a great grade compared to this right here, which is a 9.8. If this book was a 9.8, right now I could probably get like 150 for this book. If it was a 9.8, I probably could get 250. So that's a big difference in it.
Even though it's autographed?
Even though it's autographed and it's got that Super Bowl champs, the reason why I'm going to get 150 out of this is because it has that Super Bowl champs on it. And it's the idea that people want a 9.8 versus a 9.4. There's a reason why I had that Super Bowl thing prescribed onto it, because it changes and helps add value to it and makes it different than anything else. So condition does matter a lot, but it also depends on the year that the book was produced. It depends on how many survive. It also depends how many are graded. And then on top of all that, certain books, have extremely low print runs. If you have a comic book that has 6,000 comics printed, and you have a 9.2 of it, and it is crystal clear that the majority of those books are 9.4s graded by CGC, that's also going to affect value because there's few and far in between of that book. And so that's another thing that affects value. But
how long have you held on to that book?
Which one? This one?
The Super Bowl, yeah. How long have you had that one?
I've had this book for about 3 years, and I got it signed and graded on the 2019. So it's actually super cool because it actually tells me that it was signed on April 27th, 2019. So I bought this book right when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And then like the day after I bought it. And then obviously I went to a convention, got it signed, got it graded. And yeah, so I've held on to this book for a little under 2 years or so, I would say. Almost 3 years at this point. So yeah, but at some point, while this still is a personal book, it will be sold eventually to the right person. And I would like 200, 250. If the Eagles win another Super Bowl, this book is going to go for good money the day after. And that's what I'm waiting for with this book, is when the Eagles win another Super Bowl, if they ever do. And hopefully they will.
Then Tom Brady just retired?
Tom Brady just did retire. He had an unofficial announcement, and then now he has the official announcement. So, yeah.
We'll see how they do. Andrew Davis, y'all. Great job This is powerful. We are going to go to a quick commercial break. You guys stay with us. Stay tuned. We got to pay some bills. We'll be right back.
Support for Gentleman Style Podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers you precision engineering tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off free worldwide shipping with the code GENSTYLE at manscaped.com.
We are back. We have the incredible Mr. Andrew Davis. And this man just broke down, he spilled the tea on how comic books, on some of his stock is evaluated, and how, and sometimes age doesn't equal more money, but the score has a valuation to it. And wear and tear may be acceptable if the comic book has a minimal value, or very few of them has printed. So if it's harder to get, the more valuable it becomes. Did I understand that right, Andrew?
Yeah, it all depends on how many are printed, how many survived, and how many are out there. Obviously, one of the things, just to go even back to what we were talking about before the commercial break, if there was a book that is 60 years old, and let's say there's 100,000 that were printed, but only 5,000 of them are still around, or are still in good shape, or are considered to be anywhere above a 7.5, naturally that's going to fetch more money than if there's 100,000 of them are all out there. And that's kind of the whole thing, is that it really depends on the number that are out there, and it depends on what happened in that book, and it depends on how many were printed and how many survived and what condition those books are in.
Makes sense. That makes sense. We have a follow-up question from our VIP sponsor of the show, Miss Nicole Morris. She asked, and she's talking about the metaverse, right? We are now transitioning to the metaverse, and everything is transitioning. So is there an inherent value to the physical comic book, even though we're converting over to the digital space?
Yeah, this is tricky. This
Yeah.
is a real tricky discussion, because obviously there's NFTs out there of comics, and I have 2 or 3 NFTs of comic
You do.
books. And I'm not a big NFT guy. I just sort of got into the space. I'm not exactly sure how they all work. I just thought it was kind of cool and kind of fun just to have it for like $15. It wasn't that big of a deal to invest. Um, but my whole issue is that and I'll explain asset classes. So there's 2 types of assets. There is productive assets, which is the idea that a business is a productive asset where it's producing something. So the way I describe it is that if you have a farm, you have the value of the land and whatever that farm produces, whether that's mineral rights, harvest rights, cattle grazing rights. And so you have the value of the land and whatever that farm produces. And then what you have on the other thing is unproductive assets. And unproductive assets are things that are collectibles. This right here, and the reason why I'm showing this again, is because this is a non-productive asset. This doesn't produce anything at all. Now, the comic book company called Zenescope that produced it, that's a business. They produced a productive asset by producing this. But this as a investment is an unproductive asset. Now, unproductive assets have positions, they have applications. And so both NFTs and cryptocurrencies are unproductive assets, meaning that somebody's going to buy this because they perceive value in it. They want to hold it in their hand, they want to hang it up on their wall, or they think it's going to go up in value, or they view it as a store of value. So as far as NFTs go, and I'm not an NFT expert, um, that's the whole thing, is that they're both in the same space. The only thing that I could think of is that there's a few companies doing NFT comics where they basically digitalize the comic and then they mint a limited edition amount of them. And so then there's like Vivi, I want to say. But again, I am not the expert on that. And I prefer to actually have the physical item, because with me and NFTs, and I'm not anti crypto, I actually like crypto. I have crypto in my portfolio. But I find with an NFT is that I can go make my own NFT right now in the next hour if I want to. And I could do it on practically anything. I mean, I own intellectual property. I can make NFTs of a bunch of stuff that I own in my business because I'm not just an eBay guy. I have my own website and a variety of other things, and I actually own some trademarks and some other things. So that's why I'm saying to myself, like, we sort of do it in a comic book. That's kind of cool and all, but I just don't know enough about it. But that's the only thing. But it's still not physical. Like I can actually hold this item, and it's something that I can physically hold, and it cannot be duplicated. This is a 350 print run. With a lot of NFTs, especially with companies like Vivi, they produce 30,000 of them. And while they do have limited edition, items, and they have more rare books and uncommons and commons and super rares, and obviously those go down. There's still like the super rares, like I think it's like 500 super rares. So that's how I feel. And I can't, with this book in particular. So this book alone, if it was ungraded, is a $20 to $30 book. Then once you get it graded and get it signed, it adds value. So I can upshoot a comic book and add value into a comic book. I can't do that with an NFT because I
Right.
can't get an NFT signed. And so
Right.
I can't change the value. So this is a $150 to $200 book. I turned a $20 book by pumping $30 into it. So I turned $20, added 30 into it by getting it graded with signatures into $150. With an NFT, I can't do that. And so that's why it's complicated, where there's not necessarily a pure equivalent, because in the digital space, you can't get something digitally signed.
Makes sense. Who does the grading? Who assigns the ranking scores to the comic books?
So right now, there are two major companies. One's called CGC, which is this company. CGC, obviously, they sort of put their thing up there, and hopefully everybody can go see that. It says CGC signatures, and they're
Great.
owned by
Go ahead.
they're
I'm
owned by
honest.
Blackstone. So CGC actually just got acquired by Blackstone, and Jay-Z, of all people, did like a private equity deal. So and that company CGC's was acquired for $250+ million for a 51 plus stake in the company. So CGC is a $500 million plus evaluated company at the moment. And they do sports cards, and they do a lot of other things. They grade posters and a few other things. And so that's one. And then they just have graders that assign value to this, and they go from 10 to 9.9 to 9.8 and then downward. And then following that, the other one is CBCS, and they are Beckett, essentially, are affiliated with Beckett, and they also run on a similar grading process. And so they have people who grade books, look at books, you send your books in, and then they assign a grade to it. And that's kind of how they function. And sometimes their grades are accurate and sometimes they're not. And I don't personally think this is a 9.4, but that's what they graded at. And I don't know why, because it looks more like a 9.6. And I've had books that look like 9.4s that came back as 9.6s. So it is a very complicated process.
Of having it graded. So you don't do the do you send in recommendations? Do you send, hey, this comic book is signed by the Super Bowl winners? Like, do you help the CGC evaluate the book, or they're gonna make their own determination no matter what?
They make their own determination, and one of the things that's actually very cool is that these are witness signatures. So the way this works, for anybody who's really interested, in the short of it, is that CGC had to witness this getting signed. So
Wow.
at a convention, they needed to witness it getting signed. So if you send in a signed book to CGC, they will not authenticate the book, because they need to be able to see it, or they sometimes have a deal with certain people where they just worked out a deal where it was authenticated prior to the con, and anybody wants to get it CGC can get it graded and taken care of. So because sometimes certain artists just have deals with CGC. So one of the things is that this was witnessed at a con by a CGC representative, and that is something very, very cool to know. And that's something that they do very, very well. So obviously, that's kind of what they do. And same thing with CBCS. If I had this book signed by the artist and he wrote on it, and I sent it into CGC, it would get a green label up top, and it would just say written on marker. That doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It's just significantly less valuable in that realm. So that's something just to sort of keep in mind when checking all this stuff out, is that there's all these rules with grading and getting stuff signed and adding value to comics.
We have a follow-up question from another VIP sponsor. And Miss Nikki Brown, welcome to the show. She asks, where would a newbie, someone that's fresh, brand new, right? Maybe a young man or a young girl trying to get started in the business, where would a newbie start with purchasing or collecting comics? How do people find you?
Oh, so one of the things that people, this is how I talk about comics. One of the first things that you should do is, before you even start purchasing any comics, you have to ask, hey, what type of risk do I want to have? Am I willing to take a risk where things go up and down? And how much volatility do I have? And the reason why I ask this question, and I teach this, I consult on this, and people do, obviously take certain classes from me and hit me up for consultations and want to understand things. So I always ask saying, hey, how much volatility do you have? How much risk do you want to have? Are you okay with riding out a wave for a little bit of time? And once, if you say yes and say, hey, I want to get involved in this, and I'm willing to, put a little money and risk it and sort of take the ride a little bit in this, in the entire collectible market, I then say, okay, the next step is to go and look up and read and do a lot of research on places like Bleeding Cool, places like Newsarama, and all these, and comicbook.com. And so you actually have to do research on understand what's going on in the trends, and you need to familiarize yourself first and foremost with what is going on in the comic book world. Once that is done, you then have two choices. So what I recommend to people, and this is how I learned, and what I like to teach, is I say, look, why don't you take every single month $30 for the next 3 months and go to a comic shop once a month and just go and spend $30 and pick up 6 books in your comic shop for $4 to $5 a pop. Then look at what you're looking at, pick up something from DC, pick something up from Marvel, pick something up from Image, and then pick up 2 books. You just say, hey, these look cool. And the reason why I'm explaining that, and you're going to wind up losing money. You're going to wind up losing about $90 in 3 months. And you're probably going to break even in the long run. But you're then in the game, and then you're going to actually understand what a comic book looks like, how a comic book reads. And then you're going to say, okay, I'm now following these artists and these writers, and I'm now saying, okay, this story is doing X and what's going on. And you're actually familiarizing yourself with the trade. Because once you understand the trade, you can then start spotting trends. So this is how I like to teach, is I like to actually throw people in the middle of the lake and throw them into a comic shop or into previews or online comic shops. And you're going to lose money in a very little bit amount of money, but then you're going to get very familiar with the trade and understand what a comic book is and actually read a comic book. Because once you understand that, you're like, okay, this book is doing X. Let me actually follow this writer or this artist on Twitter. And then you're going to start getting a real sense, okay, this is hot and this is what's going on. This is not. And then that's going to start helping you to figure out, to dictate what I should be buying, who I should be following, and where I should be going with this. Because it's a $90 education that will legitimately save you so much time. Because all these people on the internet, all they do is give you a top 10 list. They give you, a top 20 list. They say this book's hot this week. And what they don't understand is that if I make a top 10 list of the top 10 comic books and I release it every Sunday, by the time I release it, if I have a big enough following, come right after that ends, everybody puts their books up on eBay. And if the book was going for $2,000 on eBay, it's now going for $1,200 because everybody flooded the market. Versus if you do it the way I'm explaining, you're not reliant on that top 10 list. And now you're spotting the trend ahead of time and you're getting a sense. And this is how I run me. And this is sort of how I figured things out. And that's going to really give you the basic education along with doing all the research and actually paying attention to what's happening. And that's sort of the first steps. And then from there you build upward because you're actually now understanding what's out there.
What's the most money you've made on one comic book?
Most money I made on one comic book.
If that's too personal, I understand. If that's
Oh
too...
no. It's tricky. So the direct sale of the comic book, or what I did with the money after, because those are two different questions,
the,
completely not.
the direct sale. What you bought it for X, sold it for Y.
I bought probably the most recent in the last 3 years is I made about $900, and I
What?
bought the two books with grading. So I put $20 and $20 40. I put $60, so I turned $60 into 900. Um, and very, 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 very cool. Um, but that's not counting waiting time and holding time, which I don't know how I truly assess that. But yeah, and
Did you know you was gonna make that much when you bought it? You
I
knew
thought
you could sell it for that much?
I thought I was gonna make maybe 300 to 400. Um, I did not expect to make about 9 on it. So I mean I knew that essentially I was gonna turn 60, $80 into about 400, which is a great rate of return.
That is a
Um,
huge rate of return. That's over
but 900,
50%.
that was nice. But I looked at the eBay fees and I was not too happy about that. 13% on $900 is a lot of money.
They ate up some profit there.
But you know what is? They also provided me protection. And that's the thing, is that I go on eBay, and I'll tell a really quick story. People do trades in comics all the time. We're saying, I'll send you this book, for instance, and you send me, you know, I have a second, send me this book, and trades go south very quickly. And people do this. They don't. They go through PayPal with PayPal fees. Sometimes they're saying, "I'll sell you book A. You give me $300 on PayPal," and people get stiff. People get screwed.
Yeah.
I pay eBay 13% because guess what happens? If a problem goes south, eBay has me covered.
Insurance. The insurance of it.
And so eBay has me covered, eBay has my back, and eBay takes care of me. And so if I have to give eBay 13%, so be it, to cover my behind. And sometimes, as I'm not making as much money, but it's also reflected in the price of what I sell is my 13%. I mean, and you could say, oh, well, your price is a little bit high. Well, you know what it is though? It's the price of doing business, and I would rather make $80 in profit and have my $80 protected than make no money in profit, because any money is better than no money.
That's true. That's true. So true. My jaw is, I'm still slobbering on myself because $900 off of a $60 investment is significant.
I mean, it took like 3 years for it to sell in that realm, but I mean, I had it for 3 years. I listed it up. It took about 90 days for it to sell. So it's still though, but I mean, I love the book, and then I actually have another set of that exact same book, and then I have a third set of that same book too, graded. So it's very, very cool, and that final set is signed by Stanley, J. Scott Campbell. It's graded, and that's a $1,600 to $2,800 book on eBay.
Because he
And that's
passed away.
it's graded, it's signed, it's super limited, and it's the connected covers from Midtown, and it's an awesome, awesome just thing. And that's a personal book. Those two books that are connected, those are personal books. And so I spent good money on those books though.
That's my mortgage payment. That's oh my gosh.
I mean, I
Sir,
bought both of those books. Sorry to interrupt. I
you're
bought
fine.
the Amazing Spider-Man 700 signed by Lee and Campbell, who's the artist, and Stan Lee created Spider-Man, for $400 for a comic book, which is a lot of money, graded 9.8. And then I bought the sequel signed by Hubert Ramos and J. Scott Campbell for another $400, graded. And they connect, and people are like, "You spent $800 on a comic?" I'm like, "Yup, I did." And but it turns out that it's doubled, if not tripled, in value, and it's only going up because Stanley's autograph is average right now. Anywhere. So he used to charge 120 an autograph. It's right now valued at about 360 to 400 per autograph signed by Stan Lee is the valuation on his autograph. Just alone, his autograph is worth what I paid for the book.
And that's because he's deceased. You'll never have another autographed Stan Lee book. He passed away recently.
So it's a very, very cool book, and it's not for sale. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with keeping books to yourself. I have my own private stash, and I love it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's cool to have fun toys.
Absolutely. Fun toys. Love it, love it, love it. How can people connect with you? How can they learn more? How can people get you for that consultation and learn more about, they may have, my grandpa may have some comic books stashed away that I need to go through and sift through. And I can say, hey, I found this. Can you help me with that? How can people connect with you?
So if you have a question just about a book, and you just shoot me a message on Facebook on Pop Anime Comics, you can go shoot me a message there. Be like, hey, I got this really quick question. I'm not gonna bill you if you say, hey, what is such and such book worth? And it's like a 5 minute question. Um, Conversely, I'm actually tempted, and I might be doing it later this year on Fireside Chat, where I might be doing comic book office hours or comic book investing office hours, and that's going to be just a free show. The only thing you have to do is sort of sign away that you have to be on my show, and I don't owe you any money for an appearance fee. But it's free. Just sign up on Fireside, and that might be coming later this year. So that's another venue, and that'll be announced on my Facebook. Page. Also, right now, though, I do have a Kickstarter that's ending tonight, in a few hours, 8 o'clock. And one of the things that I got going on is I do have about 25 spots open where I'll sit down with you for an hour to 2 hours just talking about all this stuff. And so that's something that you could pick up. It's a $50 spot. And I spend a lot of time, and I'm going to get everybody's brain thinking differently in about an hour to 2 hours about all this stuff. And we go through the basics. And I promise you that while I'm not going to give you any true buy this book, buy that book, I will change the way you view comics and alternative investing. So if you're interested in learning more about this and you want to pick up one of those spots, I'd greatly appreciate it. If not, no worries, because I get it. This is all brand new. I'm spunning things out on people. But that is actually ending in it's almost 2 o'clock here. So in 6 hours, in 6 hours, that's on Conversations in Pop Culture on Kickstarter or Pop Anime Comics on Kickstarter. Or you could just DM me on Twitter if you have a question, or if you're not ready for a consultation, you could just shoot me a message in a few months if you see this and you're like, hey, I got some ideas, or I don't know what to do. My parent died or my grandfather died and he has all these comics. If you just have a quick question saying, hey, I just need some advice, I'm more than happy to provide any advice for anybody if it's a quick question. But if you're looking for something more in depth, obviously, like an hour long conversation, we could work something out, depending on what it is, what it's not. And I've advised people on a variety of topics. About a year ago, I advised somebody on a $22,000 comic for free because he came across something, and I said, hey, why don't you call me? Here's my number. And he picked up the phone, and before we even started, I asked him a very, very funny question. He said, oh, yeah, it's my wife's, grandparents. We just found it in the attic. And I said, so does your wife want a ring? And he just laughed because he understood exactly what I was referring to. Because this guy wasn't a comic guy. He was just like, oh, snap. I just know these are valuable books. And I said, so does your wife want a ring? And he got it immediately. So obviously, though, I've advised people, because that was like a 5-minute conversation. So if you have a 5-minute question, I'm more than happy to just speak to somebody for free on something.
And that resulted in $22,000
for him. I didn't get a piece of that.
You should have. I would have.
No, you know what it is? It was one of those things where I was just happy that he didn't get swindled. Right. Because there's a lot of hawks and a lot of people. Like somebody offered him $12,000 for it. I'm like, whew. That's painful, man. And people were like offering like $4,000, and I was like, "Oh, dude, like this is bad, man. You got to talk to me." In which that I'm very much a advocate for people not getting played, and so I don't like people not getting. I want people to have a fair shot. And I said to them, "Look, if somebody offered you $18,000 for it, I would take it, because even though it's worth 22, and I'm very honest. I said, look, if somebody offered you $18,000 for it, that's a fair price, so somebody can make money on it if you want to get rid of it quickly. But he wound up selling for $22,500, which is great. So good on him. But I didn't get a piece of it because I just didn't want the guy to get played.
That's nice of you. Super nice of you. Andrew Davis, y'all. Sir, you have been phenomenal and epic, and this has been helpful. It's helpful to me. I'm gonna go raid my grandpa's garage real quick, so I'll be back. But hey, Mr. Andrew, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us and to give back in this way. This is very, very helpful. I appreciate what you do, brother. Don't ever quit. Don't ever stop. I appreciate you, man. And so y'all check him out. Check him out. That's on Pop Comics. He does some really great branding and really good marketing. You can find him anywhere on his website as well, popanimecomics.com. So if you forget the Facebook, check him out on his website as well and Twitter. So like I always end every show, take care of your friends, take care of your families, and always take care of business. This is Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show, your favorite host, and the incredible Andrew Davis of Pop Anime Comics, helping you invest in alternative investments. You don't have to stick with the stock market. You don't have to stick with traditional investing. There are other avenues, and there's money to be made here. You can make an absolute super side hustle off of this. Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Y'all have a great day. Love you guys. Bye.